Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you for joining us. We are here in Let's Talk Science with the team from ICEERS. My name is Jon Glazer. I'm from the Thank You Plant Medicine movement. And we will be reviewing today ICEERS' development of scientific research over the years and what has changed, what's the current research, and what's the future research that's coming up. So we have here Dr. Maja Kohek. She is a medical anthropologist and associate researcher. And joining us also is Genís Oña. Genís is a psychologist, pharmacologist, and PhD candidate in health psychology and psychiatry. They both work with ICEERS. ICEERS is the International Center for Ethnobotanical Education Research and Service. It's a non-profit based out of Barcelona, Spain. If you're watching, let us know where you're watching from. And during the conversation we're going to have, you're most welcome to post questions. We might answer a few of them. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the wonderful talk we're going to have about what's going on in ICEERS and in the scientific research department. Hi, Genís. Hi, Maja. How are you doing?
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi,
Doing
Jon.
good.
Great.
Yeah, quite fine.
Where are you Great. Where are you connecting from?
I'm in Slovenia currently,
Okay.
my home country.
Nice. And Genís?
I'm in Tarragona, a city near Barcelona in Spain.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm connecting from Costa Rica. So
International meeting.
International
Yeah.
meeting, yeah. I wanna kick the conversation to start it up with a little bit of context, and I present this to you, Genís. Over the last few years, what were the research focus points throughout the years for ICEERS? What did you focus on? What items were interesting to you? What questions ICEERS was trying to answer? And kind of review how ICEERS' approach has developed over the years. Maybe we can start with that. And Maja, if you also want to comment on it afterwards, please feel free. And yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because ICEERS is a non-profit organization that is mostly focused in the traditional use of psychoactive plants, you know? So from the beginning, ICEERS tried to answer very fundamental questions about this practice, like how our modern and Western society would adapt to these traditions, and how what can we do for respecting the traditional use of these plants and protecting the human rights of people using them in other countries. So from a scientific point of view, the basic questions to answer was, well, were related about health and the way in which these plants can be received or can be treated by our groups and our dynamics, no? So yeah, the thing is that, well, it is quite a long story, but I try to make it short. The thing is that ICEERS started to do research more related or more integrated in a biomedical framework, you know. And this happened during the first years of scientific research, where the José Carlos Bouso, the scientific director of ICEERS, was collaborating with Jordi Riba, the renowned pharmacologist from Sant Pau Santa Creu Hospital in Barcelona. And there, the most common way to do science was through clinical trials, you know. So clinical trial is specifically designed to answer specific questions about the pharmacology of ayahuasca and other plants. So the research that was produced in those years was focused in elucidating partially the pharmacology of ayahuasca in humans and answering, for example, there was the first paper published in this collaboration that assessed for the first time ritualistic users of ayahuasca in Brazil, and for the first time controlling so many variables like culture, like religious use, like being a practitioner of some kind of religion. This happened in 2012. And then, for example, there was another important publication that informed about the brain changes associated with long-term use of ayahuasca. And it was found that ritualistic users of ayahuasca had some differences related to the two areas in the brain, just like posterior cingulate cortex and anterior cingulate cortex, associated with executive functions and emotions and different things that, well, further studies confirmed these findings. But later on, the research in ICEERS has been focused more in communalistic aspects of ayahuasca and other plants, So we were not interested in the specific effects of ayahuasca and other plants, but in how community can establish a relationship with these plants. And we tried also to avoid this biomedical framework, which is kind of very reductionistic in the questions that it is able to design, but also in the interpretation of the findings that can be found.
Yeah, maybe I would just add. Maybe I would just add that maybe in the beginning, ICEERS tried to bring these plants closer to science, but now maybe we are going more into the direction to bringing these plants closer to the people and trying to, look at this phenomena from a bit more holistic view, because, whatever studies you do, you always encounter some limitations, and I guess there is still a lack of these studies that look at it a bit more holistically and that are not so much focused on biomedical parameters of these substances.
Yeah, it's interesting in that sense, because as you create a science, it's always behind the direct experience of the people. It's behind the direct experience of the villages, of the people that use it, of the people that need it for healing. And you're basically kind of tracing and creating evidence that is relevant for the past rather than the present moment. And what I like about the new approach is that it allows you to be more in tune with what's going on. And I would like to ask you, how did ICEERS over the years utilize the data? Like, what is the end for the data that's coming out of the research team?
Yeah, well, it is more related with. Well, first of all, we tried also to offer evidence that it is not previously explored, So we are also thinking in offering new information and very updated information about the needs of the community. So the use of the data is related basically with answering complex questions. We are trying to shift from the basic and very extended tendency of science, of modern science at least, to isolate the phenomenon that you are studying and answering questions only related with this isolated aspect. We are shifting to a more complex view in which even it is not important the plant itself, but also the cultural framework, the way in which this plant is used, the context in which it's used. So the aspect that we would want to emphasize is this kind of adventure to the complexity, you know, because the easiest thing is to go to the particular and to the productionistic world that you can create when you isolate so many parts of reality. And yeah, we are interested in obtaining this kind of complex information. Yeah, but maybe Maja is more familiar with this.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add actually that how do we use this information, and how do we then put it into practical life, is also all this knowledge, this studies that we did, and now it doesn't matter quantitative, qualitative, clinical trials, all this knowledge serves also in really concrete purposes. For example, when people get into trouble, into legal issues because of these plants, we can offer them assistance with our knowledge, with our know-how, and to educate and lawyers and basically the whole juridical system about these plants, and try to help people who encounter themselves in such tricky situations and give them some arguments how they can also defend themselves, which I think is really valuable as well. That's what the Ayahuasca Defense Fund is doing for several years, and they had quite some successes also. Well, depends on the country. Some countries are not that open to these plants and these traditional uses, and they look at it in a very narrow mind, basically. But still, I think there has been quite some success achieved with these programs and this support.
Yeah, I've recently saw that there was a very important case in Spain where the judge declared that based on the evidence, the political branch and the legislatory branch needs to review their laws in Spain, which is basically the judge saying to the government, you need to change the law because based on the law, the current laws, we cannot really work here. And the person that was charged, as far as I know, was released, and that was a lot based on the research and the testimonies that come from ICEERS.
Yeah.
In Spain, the situation is maybe a bit better than in other countries. But yeah, there were also, for example, cases where people would get in trouble because of the coca leaf. And they were accused of producing cocaine out of, 2 kilos of coca leaf. That's ridiculous. And by the intervention or by the help of ICEERS, actually, who was able to explain that, well, that's doesn't make sense that a drug trafficker would go through all this trouble with such a low amount of coca leaf. So then, they also were able to help people in such cases. And this still happens in a lot of different countries.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I'm going to jump to the next question, and I'd like to hear from you. What excites you? What excites you about the new approach that ICEERS is developing? And how do you see that playing into the future of ICEERS research? Because when you go to a more let's say less specific, less reductionist model, you might be received by the scientific community as not working with hard science. and how do you plan to navigate that, right?
Well, it's a complex question. First of all, the thing that excites me is this, I don't know the exact word in English, but this bravery, about confronting the complexity. Because, well, you can see this in many fields, like psychology or pharmacology or public health, politics. And there is a tendency of going back to more holistic views, actually. So this is not quite strange, because it is sometimes very clear that it's better to approach a phenomenon from a holistic perspective, because if something has reality, is complexity. So when you use a drug, or when you are implementing a policy in public health or whatever, there are so many effects and so many consequences about what you are doing, that you need to analyze the situation from different aspects, no? And considering what is happening from this open view. So the thing that this approach is such welcomed in ICEERS is it's a truly gift. And the thing that also the thing that Maja mentioned about the use of evidence in other fields, it's also very positive, because it's a good thing about ICEERS that the evidence we produce is the evidence that we can use later in a trial, where one person is suffering the effects of the drug prohibitionist model, and you can help them, and you can help not only the person that is being accused, but also their family and their friends and their community. So it's very, you can see a good way of doing things, that you are working actually to help people in the end. So this is very, very beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you, Maja.
What motivates me? I'm a very curious person. I'm interested in a lot of things. So I don't know, this field for me, it's a little bit like a playground where you can combine and take information from different disciplines, look at some research questions from different disciplines, and they will all contribute to it. It's like, I'm an anthropologist. That's what interests me. That's what drives me. I like to look at things from as many possible angles and try to understand it from all of these sides. And then, the reality will be somewhere a mixture of all of this. And I think it's important because it gives you, how to say, I don't want to sound, I don't want to say that biomedical approach is wrong, but if you are researching substances such as ayahuasca or cannabis, which have a lot of different substances, it's not only this one pure molecule that you are researching. It's a complex thing, and it's not only the substance, it's how it's being used, it's how the setting looks like, it's how you are thinking about it and why you are doing it. It's all this world around that you can't just neglect. You can't just take the substance and say, okay, well, this substance does that to that. It doesn't work like that, no? And to research these substances in such a reductionistic way will give you some results, yes, and they can be used in some way, but they are just not the whole truth. So for me, it's really amazing to have the opportunity to work in such a great team as ICEERS is, because then you can see also how your work can contribute to something bigger, how it's useful, and for me it's fun, because that means usually for me to go to field, to talk with people, to engage with them, to participate, to observe, and that's just fun.
I agree. It's also my preferred part is to engage. What comes to mind as you were speaking is that as far as I understand, in psychiatry, there hasn't been a lot of progress in terms of pharmacology that actually resolve the difficulties or the problems. And most of the pharmacological substances are targeting symptoms. And it's very possible that because of the reductionist approach, there other elements are not taken care or not thought of. And then people cannot really get to a position of healing, where you do find a lot of people that work with the traditional formats do receive healing that is substantial, that is long-term. So that's something that came to mind as you were answering.
It's an important part, the ritual in which these plants are used, who is leading the ceremony, what kind of motivation the participants have, or why do they even participate or consider participating in such ceremonies. That all plays a role in its effects in the end. And I mean, it's getting very popular in our Western world currently. There is a lot of groups that are offering all sorts of ceremonies, all sorts of plants, which I think you should be also a bit mindful and careful with it, because it's not completely harmless substances that we are dealing with, no, and they can cause potential harms if they are not used properly. And that was also basically a bit part of my PhD thesis that I was doing in Catalonia, where I lived with one community that is using cannabis and ayahuasca and other substances on a regular basis, but always in a ritual setting, always done by elders, by people who have a lot of experience, who know what you are going through, who know how to help you. And that was quite interesting to basically participate in that, because as I said, there are a lot of different groups that are offering all sorts of treatments, let's say, but you really have to research well and know the person.
I think we lost Maja.
Oh, yeah, we lost her.
Okay, I'll take this opportunity to tell the viewers, if you're watching, let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions to ICEERS scientific team, please post it, and we will bring it up. And until Maja comes back, Genís, I want to pick your brain about the success that ICEERS had recently with a specific research article that was reached the top 50 most downloaded studies in 2021 so far in Scientific Reports, which is part of Nature. And that research is about the effects of ayahuasca on mental health and quality of life in naive users. And if you can tell us about this research, what was peculiar and interesting, and why it was so, why it became so popular worldwide.
Yeah. Well, we were very surprised when we saw the high number of downloads of this article. It is certainly unusual for a scientific article to have this number of downloads, because, well, there is actually a concern in this sense related to the public impact that science is having, because it's usual that very few people read the whole paper, and in the end, it is always difficult to know the impact that some research is having. So this high number of downloads is very surprising, but I think that the main reason for that was that the journal, the scientific reports, is publishing evidence coming from very distinct fields. It is a multidisciplinary journal, so you can find articles about marine biology, about oncology, about mathematics, I don't know, about so many fields, So the audience of the journal is quite broad, And the thing that ayahuasca is becoming a very interesting topic, not only for users or for lay people, but also to experts in neuroscience, in psychology, in pharmacology, in botany, So this helped, no doubt about it, in reaching this high number of people, because it is, well, reasonable that a journal open to so many. Hi, Maja.
Hey, I'm back.
So many fields have.
You're back, great.
Yeah, have this interest, and well, about the research itself, I think that, well, we can mention different things, but this is the result of other studies that were performed previously. As I said, this first study in 2012 about users of ayahuasca in Brazil, which was the doctoral thesis of José Carlos Bouzo. This was maybe the first evidence about that, but even when this study offered breakthrough information and new information about how ayahuasca is related with different aspects of health, this research was lacking a very important aspect about ayahuasca users, and this is the possibility that ayahuasca users showed better results in psychopathology or in neuropsychological tests, because they were kind of resistant to some adverse event of ayahuasca, and you are studying actually a very self-selected sample, So you don't know what happened to people who started to use ayahuasca and then stopped their use for some reason. These people is not reachable, because you cannot follow any person that is introduced to ayahuasca. So this thing is one of the things that we wanted to correct or to explore in this study, analyzing only ayahuasca naive users, people who started to use ayahuasca. And this happened in this case with a sample of 40 naive users. And we followed them for 6 months to see potential long-term consequences in their health. And for our surprise, most of people who started this use of ayahuasca had a very high scores in psychopathology, in different scales of psychopathology, like anxiety or depression and these things. But after using ayahuasca, these scales decreased dramatically, and these effects persisted until the 6 months. So for the first time, we had this evidence of, well, no matter if you are using ayahuasca for 10 years, maybe it will be the same thing if you start to use now. So, it's a kind of different information.
Mm-hmm. But I actually saw that in the recent study you had a group of about 200 starting up, and then you ended up with about around 100 subjects that you could follow up all the way to 12 months period. So that was very interesting. Any other items from that research that you think are important to know specifically?
Well, we had also this variable of satisfaction of quality of life that was also quite affected by the use of ayahuasca. At the beginning, you can see how the quality of life, which was measured with a scale from the WHO, from World Health Organization. The score of in this scale was quite low, and in the end, this score increased as well. So we were not focused only in psychopathology scales, which is also a very specific thing, but also quality of life, which is more broad and is informing more about the daily well-being of subjects, and we consider this also very important. But let me say also that I consider this research particularly well performed. This was an idea by José Carlos Bouso, but I'm also proud of that. That the study is the combination of two different studies, from a cross-sectional study comparing two different samples, ayahuasca naive users and long-term users of ayahuasca, and then a longitudinal study following these naive participants through the time, So this was actually the perfect reason for publishing two different papers and to have a lot of scientific impact and whatever. But we decided to publish this thing as a single study, as a single paper, because we thought that it will increase the understanding from the public, And many researchers are trying to publish as many papers as possible, and from one clinical trial, you can have 8 or 10 papers, but you need to read all these papers to understand what happened, and we prefer just to publish one single paper with the information all included and facilitate the life of the public.
Great, thank you so much. A question for Maja, and if you can give the viewers a little bit of view of what are the current studies that are either going on or in planning phase for the future. What questions are you looking to answer? And a segment to this question is, how is that going to come in the context of the global psychedelic research initiatives? So how do ICEERS, what is ICEERS doing right now in the face of $1 million research facilities being open around the world, like mushrooms are popping up every few months, and how is ICEERS keeping its relevance and leadership in the field?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, currently we have a couple of studies going on. I can say from my side, it's about ayahuasca, and it's a study which we basically kind of replicated from what we did in Spain 2 years ago, which is a study with regular ayahuasca users and their general health state. This is a study which we published in 2019. And now we are replicating this study in the Netherlands. So basically the idea of this study is to take the sample of regular long-term ayahuasca users and check how their health is. But general health, so how many times they go to a doctor, if they have some persistent medical conditions, how much, what their diet is, how much physical activity. I mean, all the indicators that also national governments use to assess the general health of the public, of their population. We use basically the same indicators, but then apply them to regular ayahuasca users to see, are they more or less or the same healthy as the general population. So this is what we did in Spain, and now we are doing it in the Netherlands. And this can again help basically the governments to see how ayahuasca is affecting the lives of these people. Maybe not what kind of effects ayahuasca has, but what their health state is after they are using it for a long time. So do they have some, what their health is. So that's a study that maybe could be also valuable to replicate in other countries across the world, because it's, not a study that needs $1 million, so it's way cheaper to do, and it can give you an insight into how what health status people have, even if they are using ayahuasca for a long time. And then I think Genís can say a bit more also about the clinical trial with ibogaine that is being currently done in Spain. But what I also wanted to add maybe for the second part of your question is about the future and where ICEERS can situate itself in all of this scientific scene. I think that this holistic way of doing research in ICEERS is the one that keeps us a bit different from a lot of the rest, because everyone nowadays, like the clinical trials are like the golden standard for everything. So if you don't do clinical trials, then everyone wants to do that, but that's expensive, time consuming, and yes, necessary, but not only that, I think that we should start combining these studies and take the results from the clinical trials, but then also pay attention and do more research into qualitative studies, ethnographic field work, because from there we can then see what's actually going on in the field, in the reality, in the real world. So I think this is an approach that stands out a little bit in ICEERS, and I think it's important not only for science but also for people who are somehow engaged in this field, because their experience. So when a scientist comes to a field and tries to extract information, my experience was that they have a little bit of distrust for you, or they are a little bit cautious with you. What are you gonna do with this information? Why are you doing this? What is your motivation? And I think that there is quite a huge gap still between the researchers and the groups that we are studying, and also quite some mistrust between them. No, so I think it's also important to bring these two worlds a little bit closer, and that can be done with ethnographic fieldwork, for example, and with qualitative studies, quantitative studies, both of them. But to approach people, to start a dialogue with them, to include them into the studies, that's even more important. That's important if you are doing studies with indigenous people or in a Western community, as I was. In any case, they have to have their voice in this. So I think that's an important thing that also has to be taken into consideration.
Thank you, Maja. I 100% agree with you. And I also from the sidelines see that over time looks like the unique talent of ICEERS is being able to bridge the knowledge and work with both spaces in order to create greater understanding and probably also equipped Western science with the right tools to be able to understand better the tradition of the indigenous people that have been working with these medicines and plants, etc. I pass the question to you, Genís. How do you see the ICEERS in this new playing field that has been developing? And how do you feel ICEERS can be innovative and relevant from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that the thing that characterizes ICEERS is the lack of interest in the therapeutic field, because we are not interested in the commercialization of any molecule or any treatment. We are only interested in how can we help people and how can the traditional use of these plants can be correctly and appropriately integrated in modern societies. And yeah, there is one thing about this therapeutic use of plants or other molecules with psychedelic effects that, well, as you said, in psychiatry, the history of psychiatry is filled with fails, with very good intentions, but also with lack of medications, it won't how the so yeah, it seems that the history of psychiatry is behind the discoveries are behind the theories. You have this theory, this classic theory about depression, which is caused by a chemical imbalance in your brain and these things. So the logical step was, okay, we have these drugs, antidepressant drugs, that increase serotonin and other monoamines in the brain, so they should work, right? But it seems that, according to the last meta-analysis and systematic reviews, that they are not working quite better than placebo. So something is happening. And in the case of psychedelics or natural plants, we have also different theories. One theory that it's very appealing to me is the one based in the salience network. There is different brain networks. Well, the brain has been divided in different brain networks. And one of these networks is salience network, which is the one responsible for selecting the things that you want to process, okay? And this not only happens in the outside, from the stimuli that you choose to process, but also from inside, the thoughts and the associations that brain decides to bring to consciousness, you know. And there is this theory explaining that the basic thing that psychedelics do is to hyperactivate this network. Oh, we lost Maya again.
We lost Maya again.
Oh. Well, yeah, we have this
Come
theory
back.
that explains that basically psychedelics increase the activity in this network, and then all is suddenly very interesting because you have this network hyperactive, and you can you can stare at a stone for 2 hours, and you have more associations, more thoughts, more information, and more things to process, you know. And you can think, okay, if we take this theory, we can think in some disorder in which these tools, these psychedelics, could work. And you think in depression, obviously, because people suffering depression have completely lost of interest in everything. You know, you can see how they don't want to wake up in the morning. So it's very distressing situation. But according to the last study, and which provided the most robust evidence published in the New England by the team of Imperial College, the results are quite the same because they compared the escitalopram, which is an antidepressant drug, with psilocybin. And you can see how the results were very similar, actually, not only in terms of efficacy, but also in terms of safety. The safety profile was very similar as well. So we tend to think that there is something else. There is not a molecule, there is not a drug, there is not a treatment. The answer maybe have to be searched in other places, you know. Maybe it's something related to the community, maybe something related to your history, to your family, to how you process information. Maybe the approach is very simplistic. You will not get better for talking with a therapist, for taking a drug, for taking whatever. And we think that, well, individual problems have always been treated in the community with the help of your friends, with the help of your family relatives. And maybe the solution to the epidemic of mental health problems is more in the community and less in psychiatry or in psychology. But it's only an hypothesis. We don't know.
Yeah, what you're saying is that the factors might be in the social arena rather than the pharmacological space, or a combination of the two, probably combination of the two.
Yeah.
Right, we're about to wrap this up. I'm really grateful for you both for presenting here today and sharing. Maybe one last question to you, Maya, and after you to you, Genís. What do you hope to see? What's your vision for the future of science in this field, and for ICEERS? What would you like to see happening?
Oh, what would I like to see happening?
Your highest vision for this field.
Well, that we would learn about these substances in a more appropriate way and from early on, that we wouldn't feel a lot of fear and the unknown when we hear about them or listen about them, that we would have the freedom to experiment with it in a very safe and controlled setting. that the governments would recognize the potential, the possible potential of them in our society, that the medical establishment would see these substances a bit more broader, for example, in a bit more holistic sense. Yeah, and that also that we would give more credit to the indigenous people and to their practices and what they are telling and what they know and experience and how they treat these substances, these plants, these teachers, no? And yeah, give them the stage basically, because in this case I think we can learn more from them, and we should really, yeah, listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I think it's a beautiful vision. Genís,
Yeah.
what's your vision? What's your highest hope?
We see eye to eye with Maja, first of all. But yeah, I'm sorry for not answering this question, but I'm not keen on having this view in thinking more in the future. But for me, my highest view and my dream is that people can express their truly selves. Only that, with these plants or with any other method. The thing that I think it is more important is to be yourself and to find yourself for being yourself. and that is, I think, the most important thing. And I don't know if science has something to do with that, but if this is the case, for me, it would be perfect.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful message. I want to thank the viewers and people at home watching this conversation. This was Let's Talk Science with the ICEERS Research and Scientific Team, Genís and Maja. I'm Jon Glazer from the Thank You Plant Medicine movement. ICEERS and Thank You Plant Medicine has been working together over the last few years, supporting each other in destigmatizing and making plant medicines a little bit more accessible to society, raising awareness about beneficial aspects. And you can find ICEERS on their social media. It's the International Center for Ethnobotanical Education, Research and Services. Also online on their website. There is a lot of research information, a lot of longitudinal studies. ICEERS have reports on the situation of iboga, for example, in Africa, and they have reports about different communities around the world that they did by going to the field and talking to people and interviewing a lot of stakeholders. So you can find that information on the website. For Thank You Plant Medicine, you can find us at thankyouplantmedicine.com, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook, and join the conversation. So again, thank you so much, Genís and Maja. It was a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.